The sky was dark. Thick, black clouds covered the stars, and a cold wind howled across the barren land. A broken ship lay in the middle of the wasteland, its metal body cracked and burned. Near the ship, 3 figures stood, an alien family, abandoned and alone. The father, Selra, held his injured arm, trying to stop the bleeding. His wife, Vadalina, clutched their young child, a small alien girl named Selly, who shivered in fear. Their glowing blue eyes scanned the horizon, but there was no sign of help. Only endless rocky plains and sharp cliffs surrounded them. "This is where they left us," Zelra whispered, his voice filled with pain. Valena looked at him, her face filled with sadness. "They didn't even look back," she said. Their own people had done this. Their own kind. The Galactic Council had accused them of betrayal. No trial, no explanation, just exile. The punishment was clear: leave them on this uninhabited planet and never return. Selly's small hand tightened around her mother's arm. "Mom, I'm scared," she whispered. Valena knelt and hugged her daughter tightly. "I know, my love, but we will find a way to survive." A hostile world. The planet was not completely dead, but it was not kind either. The ground was hard and dry, cracked like an old wound. Strange, twisted plants grew in some areas, but they looked poisonous. In the distance, something moved. Large, shadowy creatures, their glowing red eyes watching from the darkness. Telra knew they couldn't stay near the ship. It was too exposed. If predators attacked, they had no weapons, no way to defend themselves. "We need shelter," he said. "There might be caves in the cliffs." Valena nodded. Carrying Selly in her arms, she followed her husband toward the cliffs. The journey was slow and difficult. The cold wind made their thin clothes useless, and every step felt heavier than the last. Halfway to the cliffs, Selra suddenly stopped. His sharp senses detected something: movement in the rocks ahead. He raised his hand, signaling Valena to stop. Then, from the shadows, a creature emerged. It was massive, at least 3 times the size of Selra. Its skin was dark, covered in thick scales. Sharp claws clicked against the ground as it stepped forward, its forked tongue tasting the air. Its eyes, glowing like burning coals, locked onto them. Valena gasped and held Selly closer. Zelra knew they had no chance in a fight. His injured arm was useless, and even at full strength, he couldn't match the creature's size or speed. There was only one option. "Run," he shouted. A desperate escape. They turned and ran, their feet kicking up dust and small rocks. The creature let out a deep, growling sound and charged after them. Selly screamed as the ground shook beneath them. Valena pushed herself harder, every muscle in her body burning. Selra stayed behind them, trying to slow the beast down, but it was getting closer. The cliffs were just ahead. A small opening, a cave, was visible at the base of the rocks. It was their only hope. Inside. "Now!" Zelra yelled. Valena ran straight into the cave, clutching Selly. Zelra followed, his heart pounding. The creature lunged, its claws slashing through the air, barely missing his back. As soon as he was inside, he grabbed a heavy rock and pushed it against the entrance. The creature roared in frustration. It clawed at the opening, but the rock held firm. After a few moments, the beast let out a final growl and backed away into the darkness. Inside the cave, the family collapsed, breathing heavily. Selly clung to her mother, shaking. "Are we safe now?" she asked. Zelra looked at the entrance, then at his wife. They were safe, for now, but they were still stranded, still alone, and no one was coming for them. The cave was dark and cold. Water dripped from the ceiling, and the air smelled of damp rocks. Selra, Valena, and little Selly sat close together, their bodies shaking from exhaustion. The heavy rock at the entrance kept the creature out, but it also trapped them inside. Selly clung to her mother's arm. "I'm hungry," she whispered. Valina stroked her daughter's head gently. She wanted to cry, but she couldn't. She had to stay strong. For Selly. Zelra checked his wounds. His injured arm throbbed with pain. He tore a piece of fabric from his clothing and wrapped it around the wound. It wasn't much, but it would stop the bleeding for now. "We need food," Valina said softly. "And water." Zelra nodded. "I'll find something." He stood up, ignoring the pain in his body. He couldn't afford to rest. If they didn't eat, they would grow weaker. And if they grew weaker, they wouldn't survive. A dangerous hunt. Moving the rock at the entrance carefully, Zelra peeked outside. The creature was gone. The land outside was silent, but he knew danger still lurked in the shadows. He turned to Valina. "Stay here. Keep Selly safe." Valina's eyes filled with worry. "Be careful." Zelra stepped out into the open. The cold wind hit him immediately, but he ignored it. His eyes scanned the area, looking for anything edible. There were strange plants growing near the rocks. Some had dark red leaves, others had long vines with sharp thorns. He didn't know which ones were safe to eat. Then he heard a sound, a faint rustling. Something was moving in the tall grass ahead. Zelra crouched low, his body tense. If it was another predator, he had no weapons to fight. But if it was something smaller, maybe it could be food. He moved slowly, careful not to make a sound. The rustling grew louder. Then suddenly, a small creature jumped out. A furry, four-legged animal with big ears and black eyes. It froze when it saw Zelra. For a moment, both of them stared at each other. Then the creature turned to run. Zelra acted fast. He grabbed a nearby rock and threw it with all his strength. The rock hit the creature's leg, and it tumbled to the ground with a sharp cry. Zelra rushed forward. The creature struggled, but its leg was broken. Zelra hesitated for a second. He didn't enjoy killing, but his family was starving. "I'm sorry," he whispered before ending the creature's suffering. A small victory. Zelra carried the small animal back to the cave. When Valina saw it, she sighed with relief. "It's not much, but it will keep us alive," Zelra said. Valina quickly built a small fire using dry branches she had collected inside the cave. They roasted the meat carefully, making sure it was cooked. When it was ready, they ate in silence. Selly took a small bite and made a face. "It tastes weird," she mumbled. Valina smiled weakly. "I know, my love, but it will help us stay strong." Zelra took a deep breath. This was only the beginning. They had food for now, but what about tomorrow? What about next week? He looked at his wife and daughter, then at the dark sky outside. They were alone, stranded on this planet. No one was coming for them, but he refused to give up. No matter what, he would keep his family alive. Zelra sat at the entrance of the cave, staring at the endless sky. The two moons of the planet cast a pale glow over the rocky landscape. His injured arm still throbbed, but he ignored the pain. His mind was occupied with a single thought: how to escape. Inside the cave, Valina sat beside Selly, gently humming a soft tune to help her sleep. The child's breathing was slow, steady, but weak. She needed real food. The small creature they had eaten wasn't enough. "We can't stay here forever," Valina whispered. Zelra nodded. "I know, but we have no ship, no weapons, no way to call for help." Valina sighed. "Then we wait for a miracle." A light in the sky. That night, the miracle arrived. A bright streak cut across the sky, moving fast. Zelra's sharp eyes followed it, his heart pounding. It was not a meteor. It was a ship. He jumped to his feet. "Valina, look." She rushed to the entrance, eyes wide in shock. "Is it them?" she asked, fear in her voice. Zelra knew what she meant. If it was their own kind, it could be another execution squad. But something was different. The ship's design was unfamiliar. Its movements were smooth, controlled. Then a blue light flashed in the sky. A scanning pulse. The ship was searching for something. Zelra didn't hesitate. He ran out of the cave and raised both hands toward the sky. He knew he was taking a risk. If this was an enemy, he was making himself an easy target. But if there was even a small chance of rescue, he had to take it. The arrival. The ship slowed down, then hovered above the ground. Dust and small rocks flew in all directions as landing thrusters activated. The air became thick with the sound of powerful engines. Valina held Selly tightly, her body tense. Zelra, be careful. The ship's ramp lowered, revealing a figure stepping into the dim light. It was not their kind. The being was tall, covered in strange protective armor. It had 2 arms, 2 legs, and a helmet with a glowing blue visor. The design was unfamiliar, but Zelra had studied many species before exile. He knew exactly what this was. A human, he whispered. The human raised a strange device, scanning the area. Then, in a deep but calm voice, it spoke. Are you in need of assistance? First contact. Zelra hesitated. He had heard stories of humans. Some said they were violent, unpredictable. Others said they were different from most species, strangely compassionate. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. Yes, he said, his voice steady. We are stranded. We need help. The human studied him for a moment, then tilted its head slightly. How many of you? My wife and child are inside the cave, Zelra replied. The human paused, then pressed a button on his wrist. Captain, I have survivors. Requesting medical team. A crackling voice responded, but Zelra couldn't understand the language. The human turned back to him. Help is coming. Valina stepped out, holding Selly. The child's pale skin and weak frame caught the human's attention. It knelt down slightly, observing the small girl. She's malnourished, the human said. We have food and medicine aboard our ship. Selly, too weak to speak, simply stared at the human with wide, tired eyes. Valina's voice trembled. You will help us. The human didn't hesitate. Of course, that's what we do. Hope in the darkness. As more humans arrived, carrying supplies and medical kits, Zelra felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. For the first time since exile, he believed that maybe, just maybe, they would survive. Zelra watched as the humans moved quickly and efficiently. One of them, a female in a white suit, knelt beside Selly and scanned her with a strange device. The screen blinked with unreadable symbols, but the human nodded. She's weak, but we can help, the woman said. Valina clutched Selly tightly. She didn't trust these beings, not yet. Who are you? She asked, her voice shaking. The first human, the one in the blue glowing helmet, stepped forward. We are from the UN Andromeda, a deep space exploration team. We received your distress signal and came to investigate. Zelra frowned. We didn't send a distress signal. The human hesitated. Your ship's emergency beacon was still active. That's how we found you. Zelra glanced at Valina. Their ship was a wreck. They had assumed all systems were dead, but somehow a signal had still gone out. Maybe fate had given them a second chance. Uneasy trust. The humans offered them food. Small packets filled with a soft, tasteless paste. Nutrient rations, one human explained. It will help regain strength. Valina was hesitant. How do we know it's not poisoned? The human sighed, then took a packet, squeezed some into his mouth and swallowed. See, safe. Zelra took a deep breath, then carefully fed a little to Selly. The child swallowed weakly, then blinked in surprise. It's warm, she whispered. Valina, still suspicious, finally accepted some food as well. Hunger overpowered fear. Meanwhile, the humans continued scanning the area. "This planet isn't safe," the leader said. "Large predators, harsh conditions. You won't last long here." Zelra nodded. "We know." The leader gestured toward their ship. "We can take you somewhere safer." Valina stiffened. "Why would you help us?" The human paused, then simply said, "Because it's the right thing to do." Boarding the human ship, it was a difficult decision, but Zelra knew they had no other choice. If they stayed, they would die. If the humans had bad intentions, then they were doomed anyway. With great caution, he nodded. "We accept." The humans led them toward their ship, a large, sleek vessel with glowing blue lights and smooth metallic walls. As they stepped inside, a gentle hum filled the air. The floor beneath them vibrated slightly, and the air was clean and warm. Selly clung to Valina's arm, her eyes wide with awe. "It's big," she whispered. The human leader smiled. "Welcome aboard." The doors closed behind them with a soft hiss. Zelra took a deep breath. They had left the hostile planet behind. But was this new place truly safe? As the ship lifted off, disappearing into the stars, he couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. As the alien family stepped onto the human vessel, they felt a strange mixture of relief and fear. The walls were smooth, metallic, and lined with glowing blue panels. Soft humming filled the air, and the temperature was warm, comfortable. It was nothing like the cold, harsh world they had just escaped. But comfort did not mean safety. Zelra remained tense, his eyes scanning every corner. Valina kept Selly close, her grip tight. The humans had helped them so far, but why? No one had ever shown their kind such kindness before. The human leader, still wearing his blue glowing helmet, gestured forward. "Follow me. We'll take you to the med bay." Medical aid. The ship's corridors were long, with doors that slid open silently as they walked. A few other humans passed by, giving curious glances, but not stopping. Soon, they entered a bright white room filled with strange machines. The female human in a white suit, clearly a doctor, was already waiting for them. She motioned for Selly to be placed on a soft medical bed. Valina hesitated. "What are you going to do?" "Just a health scan," the doctor replied gently. "We need to make sure she's stable." Zelra gave a slow nod. "Do it." A circular device hovered over Selly, scanning her with a soft blue light. The screen displayed strange symbols that Zelra couldn't read, but the doctor frowned slightly. "She's severely dehydrated, lacking essential nutrients," she muttered. She turned to a nearby cabinet and pulled out a small device. "This will help." She pressed it against Selly's arm. A soft hiss sounded, and the child flinched. Valina's eyes widened. "What did you do?" "It's a nutrient injection," the doctor said. "Nothing harmful." Zelra watched carefully. A moment later, Selly's breathing became steadier. Color slowly returned to her pale skin. Valina gasped. "She looks better." Selly blinked, looking up at the doctor. "Thank you," she whispered weakly. The doctor smiled. "You're welcome, little one." Questions and suspicion. After Selly was stabilized, the human leader led Zelra and Valina to a private room. A long table sat in the center, with chairs on both sides. The leader removed his helmet, revealing a sharp but calm face, short dark hair, and brown eyes that studied them carefully. "My name is Captain Elias Carter," he said. "Now, who exactly are you?" Zelra glanced at Valina. They had been betrayed before. Sharing too much information could be dangerous. "We are just a family," Zelra said cautiously. "Exiled from our home." Captain Carter folded his arms. "Exiled? Why?" Zelra hesitated. The truth was painful. "Our people believed we were traitors," he admitted. "They left us to die." Valina's hands clenched into fists. "We did nothing wrong, but the Galactic Council doesn't care about truth." Captain Carter's expression didn't change. He simply nodded. I see. He leaned forward slightly. And tell me this, if we hadn't found you, what was your plan? Zelra looked down. We had no plan. Carter sighed, rubbing his forehead. Well, you're lucky then, because we don't abandon people in need. A new home, or a new threat. Zelra and Valina exchanged glances. Was this real? Were humans truly this different? Before they could ask, a voice crackled through the ship's speakers. Captain, incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. Zelra's blood ran cold. Had their people found them? Captain Carter's expression darkened. He stood up. Stay here. I need to handle this. As he left the room, Zelra clenched his jaw. Their fight for survival was not over yet. Zelra and Valina sat in tense silence. The room felt colder now, the smooth metal walls pressing in on them. Selly, now feeling better, rested quietly, unaware of the storm that was about to come. Outside, Captain Carter was answering the call from the Galactic Council. Zelra's heart pounded. His people had abandoned him once. Would they now try to destroy him? Would these humans turn them over? The door remained shut, but through the thin walls, they could hear muffled voices. Carter's tone was calm but firm. The other voice, sharp, demanding. Valina clenched her fists. We should run, she whispered. Zelra shook his head. Where? We are on their ship. And even if we escape, we have nowhere to go. Valina exhaled shakily. She hated feeling helpless. Minutes passed. Then, the door opened. Captain Carter stepped in, his expression unreadable. He walked to the table and slowly sat down, folding his hands in front of him. They want you back, he said. Zelra stiffened. To execute us. Carter didn't deny it. They say you are criminals. We are not. Valina snapped. Did they tell you what we did? Did they tell you that we only spoke the truth? Carter sighed. No details. Just that handing you over would maintain peace. Zelra narrowed his eyes. And what do you think? The human decision. For a moment, Carter didn't answer. His brown eyes studied them, measuring, testing. Then he leaned back and shook his head. I don't hand innocent people over to die, he said. Zelra's breath caught. You believe us? Carter smirked slightly. I don't know if you're innocent, but I do know how corrupt the Galactic Council is. Valina's eyes widened. Then, you won't give us up. Carter's smirk disappeared. No, but this means trouble for me too. Zelra felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, gratitude, and guilt. Your people will come after you, he said. Because of us. Carter shrugged. Let them come. His tone was casual, but there was something deadly serious in his eyes. Humans don't like bullies. Preparing for the worst, Carter stood. We need a plan. If the Council wants you dead, they won't stop with just a request. They might send ships. Zelra knew he was right. The Council was ruthless. They would rather destroy an entire human vessel than let a traitor escape. Carter tapped his communicator. All crew to battle stations. Prep the ship for a possible hostile encounter. Valina swallowed hard. We're putting you in danger. Carter gave her a sideways glance. If you think this is the first time someone's tried to kill me, you don't know humans very well. The ship's alarms suddenly blared. A robotic voice echoed through the halls. Warning. Unidentified ships approaching. Zelra's stomach twisted. They were already here. Carter's jaw tightened. Looks like your old friends didn't wait for an answer. The screen on the wall lit up, showing several warships dropping out of hyperspace. The Galactic Council had come. Valina gripped Selly tightly. Zelra's hands curled into fists. Carter turned to them, eyes sharp. Buckle up, he said. It's about to get rough. The ship trembled as alarms blared through the corridors. Red warning lights flashed, and the robotic voice repeated the same message. Warning. Unidentified ships approaching. Zelra stood frozen, staring at the screen. Outside, in the vast darkness of space, 3 massive warships loomed closer. Their dark metallic hulls reflected the glow of distant stars. The Galactic Council had wasted no time. They sent battleships. Valina whispered in horror, just to capture us. Carter's expression was grim. No, not to capture. His fingers tightened into fists. To erase you. The realization sank in like ice. The Council didn't just want them back. They'd wanted them dead. And they were willing to destroy a human ship to do it. First strike. Carter turned sharply toward his communicator. All crew, battle stations, shields to max power, arm railguns and missile systems. His crew responded instantly. Zelra felt the hum of energy pulse through the ship's walls as defense systems powered up. A voice crackled through the comms. "Captain, incoming message from the lead warship." Carter exhaled and tapped a button. "Put it through." A holographic screen flickered to life. A tall, cold-eyed alien in a high-ranking uniform appeared. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was pure authority. "Human vessel, you are harboring criminals of the Galactic Council. Hand them over now, and we will spare your ship." Carter folded his arms. "Yeah, that's gonna be a no from me." The alien's eyes darkened. "You do not understand the consequences of defying us." "Oh, I do," Carter said, smirking. "I just don't care." The alien's face twisted with anger. The screen cut off. A second later, the warships opened fire. Chaos in space. Bright red plasma bolts streaked through the void, heading straight for them. The ship shook violently as the first blast struck the shields. The force threw Zelra and Valina off balance. Shields holding at 75%. A crew member shouted. "Return fire," Carter ordered. The human ship fired back. Railguns launched metal slugs at incredible speeds, tearing into the enemy ships. Explosions flared in the darkness. Missiles shot forward, weaving through space, targeting weak points. Zelra had never seen a human warship fight before. He expected them to run, to be overwhelmed. But they didn't. They fought back. Hard. "Target their engines," Carter commanded. "If we can cripple one, we stand a chance." Another explosion rocked the ship. Sparks flew from a nearby console. Shields at 50%. Valina held Selly tightly, shielding her from the chaos. "We can't stay here. We need to do something." Zelra gritted his teeth. "We're useless in this fight. The humans are the only reason we're still alive." And yet, something felt wrong. A desperate plan. Zelra turned to Carter. "They're risking everything for us." Carter didn't look away from the battle. "Yeah, and..." Zelra hesitated. "They won't stop. Even if you defeat these ships, the Council will send more." Carter smirked. "Then we'll just keep embarrassing them." But Zelra wasn't convinced. There has to be another way. Carter gave him a quick glance, then turned to his crew. "Helm, how fast can we jump to hyperspace?" "Engines damaged, Captain. We need at least 5 minutes." "We don't have 5 minutes," Valina said. Zelra's mind raced. There had to be a way to stop the attack. A distraction. A weakness. And then an idea hit him. "Their command ship," he said. "Take it out, and the others will hesitate." Carter raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" Zelra nodded. "Without leadership, they won't know whether to chase us or retreat." Carter grinned. "I like the way you think." He turned to his weapons officer. "Lock onto the command ship's bridge. Fire everything we've got." The ship trembled as missiles and railgun shots ripped through space, heading straight for the enemy leader's ship. The Galactic Council had come to destroy them, but the humans were proving that they wouldn't go down without a fight. The human ship shook violently as enemy fire continued to pound against the shields. Sparks rained down from damaged control panels, and the air was filled with the sound of alarms. The crew worked furiously, their faces tense but determined. Zelra gripped the edge of a metal railing, watching the battle unfold on the main screen. His heart pounded as he saw the human missiles streaking toward the command ship of the Galactic Council fleet. Then, impact. A massive explosion ripped through the enemy warship. Fire and debris scattered in all directions. The bridge of the command ship was hit directly, its structure breaking apart in the void of space. The other two Council warships hesitated. Their leader was gone. "It's working," Lena gasped. Carter smirked. "Told you, cut off the head and the body panics. Retreat or fight." For a moment, Zelra dared to hope. Maybe the battle was over. Maybe the enemy ships would retreat now that their command was destroyed. But then, the remaining two warships opened fire again. More plasma bolts came screaming toward them. Carter cursed. Guess they're angrier than scared. The human ship shuddered as the shields took more hits. "Shields at 20%, Captain," a crew member called out. Carter's jaw tightened. "All right, time for Plan B." He turned to his navigator. "Do we have enough power for a short-range warp?" The navigator quickly checked his console. "Yes, but barely. We can jump once. After that, we'll need time to recharge." Carter nodded. "That's all we need." He turned to Zelra. "You were right about the command ship. Now, it's my turn to get us out of here." A desperate escape. The ship trembled again as another enemy shot hit them. Zelra could feel the heat from an overloaded console behind him. They were running out of time. Carter grabbed the comms. "All hands, brace for warp jump." Zelra held tightly onto a nearby support bar. Lena wrapped her arms around Selly, shielding her. The human ship's engines roared to life. Energy crackled through the hull as the warp drive charged up. On the screen, the enemy ships adjusted their course, realizing what was about to happen. "They're trying to block us," Lena shouted. Carter grinned. Too late. With a burst of light, the human ship vanished into hyperspace. A moment of silence. Everything went still. The hum of the engines softened, and the alarms quieted. The shaking stopped. Zelra slowly opened his eyes. They were no longer in the middle of a battle. Through the large window, he saw a vast, calm expanse of space. No enemy ships, no explosions. "We made it," Lena whispered. Carter let out a breath and leaned back in his chair. "Told you we'd be fine." The crew cheered, but it was a tired cheer. They had won the fight, but they all knew it wasn't over. The reality of war. Zelra turned to Carter. "They won't stop." Carter nodded. "Yeah, I know." Lena frowned. "Then what do we do? Keep running forever?" Carter looked at her, then at the rest of the crew. His expression was serious now. "No," he said, "we don't run. We fight smart." Zelra narrowed his eyes. "You're planning something." Carter smirked. "Always. A new plan." Carter stood up and faced his crew. "The Galactic Council thought they could just wipe us out. They thought we'd be scared." He gestured toward the large window, at the empty stars ahead. "But we survived. And now we know one thing for sure." He looked at Zelra, Lena, and Selly. "They fear the truth." Zelra's eyes widened as he understood. "You want to expose them." Carter nodded. "We can't just hide. We need to show the galaxy what the Council is really doing." Lena hesitated. "That's dangerous." Carter grinned. "Yeah, but humans are really good at doing dangerous things." Zelra felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. They weren't just running anymore. They were going to fight back. The hum of the ship's engines filled the quiet room. Zelra, Lena, and Captain Carter stood around a holographic map of the galaxy. The Galactic Council's main territories glowed in red. Their controlled media, their military outposts, their propaganda machines, all marked. "They control everything," Lena said, her voice bitter. Not for long, Carter replied. He tapped the hologram, zooming in on a communications hub orbiting a distant planet. This is our target. Zelra frowned. What is it? Carter grinned. A broadcasting station. It's where the council filters news and spreads their lies. Valina's eyes widened. You want to hack into it? Carter's grin widened. Oh, not just hack it. We're going to take over their biggest broadcast and show the whole galaxy what they've been hiding. Zelra felt his heart race. This was it. The moment they stopped running. Infiltrating the station. The human ship dropped out of hyperspace near the station. The massive structure hung in orbit, surrounded by smaller defense drones. Stealth mode activated, a crew member reported. Carter turned to Zelra and Valina. You two are coming with me. Zelra hesitated. I'm not a soldier. Carter smirked. Good. This isn't a war. It's truth. A small shuttle detached from the main ship and glided silently toward the station. Carter piloted with smooth precision, avoiding security scans. Zelra's hands clenched into fists. He had spent so long hiding. Now he was stepping into enemy territory. Inside enemy lines, the shuttle docked at an emergency maintenance hatch. Carter pried it open, and they slipped inside. The hallways were cold and metallic, dimly lit. Guards patrolled in pairs, but Carter moved like a shadow, taking them down without a sound. Valina kept close to Zelra. Stay alert. Zelra nodded, forcing himself to stay calm. They reached the main control room, a large chamber filled with screens and blinking lights. A massive holographic broadcast played council-approved messages to billions across the galaxy. Carter pointed at a terminal. That's our way in. Zelra moved quickly, his fingers flying over the controls, breaking through the firewalls, bypassing security. An alarm suddenly blared. They know we're here, Valina shouted. Carter pulled out his blaster. Then let's give them a reason to panic. The truth goes live. Zelra worked fast, bypassing the final encryption. We're in, he shouted. Carter grabbed a communicator and broadcasted live across the Council's controlled networks. The screens flickered. The Council's propaganda vanished. Instead, a video played. Footage of Zelra's people being persecuted, of colonies burned, of Council warships silencing voices that spoke the truth. Across the galaxy, billions saw what had been hidden. Then, Carter stepped forward, staring directly into the camera. This is Captain Carter of the human vessel Defiance. The Galactic Council has lied to you. They silence those who speak the truth. They kill those who question them, but not anymore. He pointed at the camera. Now, the whole galaxy knows. The aftermath. Security forces stormed into the room. Carter shot out the lights, throwing everything into darkness. Time to go, he yelled. Valina grabbed Zelra's arm as they ran. The mission was complete, but now they had to escape. Back at the shuttle, alarms blared across the station. Fighters launched, chasing them. Carter pushed the engines to their limit. Hold on, he shouted. The shuttle shot out into space, racing toward their ship. Zelra's chest heaved. He had spent so long being afraid. Now, for the first time, he felt free. The Council had lost control of the truth, and the rebellion had begun.